That was an awkward ride back to the cell block. But I made it back to the cell block anyway. I walked back through those revolving doors, and there stood Dr. Easterman. He congratulated me and then said, "All right, here's your payment for that." And he handed me what appeared to be purple paper. What? And it said 100 on it. All right. And he said, "Oh, that was a good session. We finally understand the root of your fear and anxiety." He sneezed for a little bit, which he tried to hide it so professionally, but how professionally do you sneeze? And then he said, "All right, so it seems to me that the root of your anxiety and fear is your parents and how they're both dead." And I said, "Yeah, poor me, okay? Yeah, both my parents are dead." And he said, "Oh, okay, Ethan, I know you're really messed up over this, but you must come to terms with it." I said, "Yeah, sure, I already am, okay?" And as I was walking up the steps to get back to my monk's cell, as they told me to think about it, he said, "Wait, Ethan, we have more to talk about." "Not tonight, we don't," I said. And I closed the door, and I took off that uniform and put my clothes back on. That night, I went to dinner. You see, there was a little bell that went, and it said, "Dinner time." So I walked over to the mess hall or cafeteria, whatever the fuck you want to call it, although I kind of like the mess hall better, but it doesn't matter. And this nice lady actually handed us some, what appeared to be mashed potatoes and gravy with green beans and corn, as well as some hamburger steak. Huh. Alright. The food wasn't bad. It was at least kind of hot. And also, we could choose whatever we wanted to drink. So the food wasn't bad. And then I noticed that there was a woman sitting alone by herself. And she was praying. And, well, I want to get to know everybody in this here cafeteria because, well, if I'm going to be here for a few days, I might as well learn some names. I walked over to her, and she stopped praying and looked up at me. And I smiled and said, "Hi, I'm Ethan. I'm the new guy." And she nodded. And I said, "And you are?" And she very quietly said, "Oh, I'm Jennifer." "Jennifer, okay, Jennifer, nice to meet you. So, well, I was one of the victims at St. Stephen's." And she said, "Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Are you Ethan Upshur? I think I do remember you now. Yeah, over 4.5 years ago, you were at Templegate in Arizona. I was in that village." "You were?" "Yeah, I was one of the survivors." "Well, that's really neat." And she said, and I said, "So how you been doing since the fall of Templegate?" And she said, "Oh, I'm okay. I live with my parents now, and, well, I have a hard time with, people. And but I've been going to church twice a week, and they like me there, and I volunteer sometimes." And also, I've been going to seminary school recently. Yeah, in fact, I might be able to graduate in about a year or two. And I said, all right, okay. Nice talking to you. And so I sat up, and then I walked over to the other guys that I saw in the middle of the cell block before. I sat down with them on the thick plastic tables, and I said, so, I've seen you guys before, but we haven't met yet. And the redhead one spoke up and said, Oi, Mackie Royley. And I've been here about a week or two. And this right here, this black fella, his name is Vonnie. And the black man spoke up and said, my name is Javon, but only Mackie can call me Vonnie, okay? You call me Javon. I said, all right. You might have heard of me. I'm from St. Stephen's. I got St. Stephen's and Templegate shut down. And he said, oh, I've heard of you. You caused that prison riot that day at St. Stephen's back over 9 years ago. I was there. I was one of the patients. And I said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And he said, don't be. Just don't ask what they did to me there. I don't feel like talking about it. I talk about it with my sessions with Dr. Easterman. And he said, all right, I won't. So, what about you, Javon? And he said, yeah, I was actually a security guard. And I said, oh, you were? And he said, yep. Yep, it was the job I had before I became a cop. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And he said, yep, always wanted to be a cop. And Mackie spoke up and said, you ain't no cop. Don't lie to him. And Javon said, yes, I am. Or was. And I said, oh, what happened? And Mackie spoke up and said, a fellow officer that really had it out for him. And Javon shot him a look, and yep, that was his cue to shut the fuck up. So I finished my meal, and I walked down to what appeared to be a kind of like a gift shop. And I noticed that a little stuffed duck caught my eye. It looked similar to Donald Duck, but I knew that they weren't going to risk having Donald Duck this close to Florida without Disney's permission. So I bought that little duck for little Rose, and I didn't have enough money for the record player, but I decided to buy the record Paranoid by Black Sabbath. And then after that, I went across to the TV room. And the thing playing on the TV was that old, familiar Roku screen. I don't know about you, but I always enjoyed looking at the Roku screen so I can see all the movie references they have in there. I went back up to my cell, and I put those things in my room. And I also noticed that there was a radio, and yeah, it played music, and it also played the news, so I could stay in touch with the outside world. And there was also some dumbbells and barbells in there, so I could at least work out while I was stuck in this place. And even though I had just gotten out of a horrible simulation, I decided to lift some weights, really wear myself out, and I do believe it did work. And eventually I did finally settle down. But that night, I had this horrible dream that I was running through some kind of factory. It was, I don't know what kind of factory it was, but it had plastic and machines everywhere. I was running, and chasing me was that thing, that mother figure. And yeah, And then eventually I ran and I tripped over something yellow. And then I woke up in my blue and green bed. And I suppose it was morning because, well, honestly, you couldn't even see what time it was. There were no windows in there. But there was a skylight that was above the cell block where you could see, and there was what appeared to be light coming out, although I don't know if it was natural light or artificial light, but, well, I mean, I suppose it was morning. So I woke up, and I went to the shower room, and then I dressed in the same clothes that I had initially appeared in, and then got some breakfast. This time it was some rather thick sausage and scrambled eggs. Again, not bad. Tasted slightly better than McDonald's. Bad. And then I heard a voice over the intercom. Come down here and get your medicine. Alright. And so we all walked down to this here medicine counter, and it was actually, the medicine counter was actually ran by a pleasant-looking blonde nurse, and she had just such a sweet voice. Yeah, she did seem pretty nice. And she said, all right, dears, here you go. And then she got to Mackie and said, oh, dear Mackie, are you feeling better? And he said, every day, my love, every day. Yeah, I later found out that both Jennifer and Mackie had schizophrenia. And Javon, he had some PTSD. And when she got to Javon, she said, here you go, here's your antidepressants. Your Zoloft. And then she got to me and she said, oh, we're going to give you the same pill you had yesterday, sweetheart. Although we don't really know what pill to give you yet. Although I think that brilliant doctor, Dr. Easterman, is going to know just what to give you right after you do this next trial that you have coming up. And so, we sat down on those tables at the middle of the cell block. And then Mackie said, all right, arm wrestle time. Come on, I'm undefeated. Come here, Ethan. And he held out his arm for an arm wrestle. And then we gripped it. And then I was going to let him win it first, but then I felt that strength that I had by Dr. Eugenic. And then I pulled him over the table. And he said, oi, where the fuck did you get all that strength from? And I was laughing. I said, I don't know. I have secrets. And he said, all right, me and Javon are going now. And he's like, I'm going to beat you, Javon. I'm going to beat you. And within about 30 seconds, Javon beat him. Yeah, we had a good laugh about it. And then that same Hispanic guard came in and said, all right, here you go. Your missions for today. Javon, Mackie, and Ethan, come here. These are your missions for today. And they handed it out in a manila envelope. And I read it. And it said, all of you have some trauma given by police, whether that be intentional or unintentional. So, your job is to go into the police station and defeat or escape the cop if you can. And then the alarm bell sounded, and we knew it was time for us to put on our uniforms and our headsets, and that is when That's when we knew we were supposed to get into that shuttle thing, this movable room that they called it. And so we walked in and we sat down in the chairs, but then something mysterious happened. Restraints landed across our wrist and bound us down. And then this green cloud of gas came raining from the ceiling. And Mackie said, "What the fuck?" And I said, "What the fuck is this?" And then we blacked out. And then I jolted awake. And then I immediately ran out of bed. And then I noticed I was in a cell, but it wasn't the cell I was assigned. This cell had bars. It was a prison cell. And I looked to the side, and there was a desk as well as a metal toilet and a sink. And also a mirror. And I ran to the bars and said, guys, what's going on? And across from me, well, not across from me, but on the wall across me, a cell away from me, facing Javon, was Mackie. And in the cell right beside me was Javon. And I said, "What the hell are we doing in jail?" And Mackie said, "The fuck if I know." And Javon said, "Oh, God. My friends always used to tell me that I would end up in jail one day. Fuck." And then, buzz. And I remembered that sound. Oh, God, it's the cop's taser. And he came in. This cop came in to the cell hallway and said, Well, we got us some fresh meat. I'm gonna teach you some lessons, boys. You should have obeyed the law. Because I am the law. I gotta go away now. I got some work I gotta do. But tonight, you gonna be crying for your mamas. And he walked away. And then we heard over the intercom saying, "Your job is to escape." And I said, "Okay. Look in your cells for clues," the intercom said. All right. And so I walked over, and at first glance, there was nothing in my cell until I looked in the mirror. And in the mirror, there was a reflection behind me. And the reflection, it was writing, but the writing was backwards. So I looked back, and it said, "Check the window." And so I did. And then in the window, I noticed that there was a bent spoon. But it was a metal spoon. Huh. Okay. And Mackie called out saying, Guys, did you find anything? I found a shiny thing in my toilet, but I can't reach it." And Javon said, "I didn't find nothing. But for some reason, I saw the poster in my cell rattle. And the poster, it was a blue poster with a fist that said, 'We the People.' And then I remembered the Shawshank Redemption. And then I pulled down the poster, and then there was a black hole in it. Not like the hole that sucks you in, but the hole was all black. And I screamed, Javon, take down that poster." And he said, "Oh, you sure? This is a pretty hot lady. It's Halle Berry from the early 2000s. I think that was her in that Bond movie. What was it? Die Another Day?" And I said, "I don't care. Take it down." "All right, whatever you say." And so he did. And then we saw each other's faces. And I said, "Oh, am I glad to see you?" Okay, so I found a spoon. And I don't know, the spoon, it's bent in some weird way. And he looked at it and said, wait a minute, hold on. That spoon, it's supposed to dig or to pry something open. And I said, okay, well, what? How do we do that? What do we pry open? Wait, can we pry open the locks of the prison cell? And Javon said, no, I don't think so. I mean, they're not, like, up-to-date, like, prison bars, but they're old prison bars. And I don't think we can just pry them open. And I said, wait a minute, hold on. How about you check the window to your cell? And he did. And then he said, oh, there's nothing there. Well, feel around. There might be something there. And then he felt around, and then I noticed that as soon as he touched one of the bricks, it started to shake a little bit, like it was loose, like it could be pried with something. And then I said, wait, Javon, grab this thing. Grab this spoon. All right, okay. Now, what I need you to do is I need you to pry that brick off, that loose brick. And then Javon stuck the spoon in and then pulled a little bit, and then the brick fell to the ground with a slam. Doo! And Javon reached in the hole that was created by the brick and pulled out a thick blue ribbon. Okay. And he grabbed the end of it, and on the end of it there was some strange metal looking thing. And he said to me, what the hell am I going to do with this? And he kind of walked it around a little bit, and the metal part was dragging on the floor, and then he stopped, like he had a hard time pulling it, and then he looked back and realized that the metal part was right against the bed frame, and he pulled it hard, and it still wouldn't budge. And eventually, he just had to pull the bed frame and the metal end of the rope apart, and then he realized it's a magnet. And so and then Mackie from across the hall said, Wait, Mike, hold on. There's something shiny in this toilet. Throw it to me. And then, so he did. And then he, as if he was fishing, he took the rope and then cast it out. But it didn't go far enough. And he said, all right, okay. Now, I need you to use it like a lasso. All right, so kind of spin it with your wrist. And then when it gets fast enough, kind of let it go. And so he stuck his arm outside the prison bars, and then he started swinging it like a lasso, and then he threw it and let it go, and then Mackie caught it midair right when it was about a foot outside a cell door, and he had to pry away from the metal bars, and then he stuck it right in the toilet bowl, and then shing, he pulled out what appeared to be a silver key. And then he opened up the cell door, and then he started walking away. And then he said, oh, wait, you guys thought I was going to leave you, didn't you? I wouldn't leave you. And he opened up Javon's door, and he opened up mine. And then we were finally free. And then, bam, the lights went out. And evidently the building lost power because Dr. Eastman said over the intercom, okay, what I need you to do now is I need you to power the police station again. The generator's in the basement. All right. And so we turned on our night vision goggles. And we started walking through. And then we noticed that beside this little mini cell block he had us in, there was like a ramp that went down to a garage door. And the garage door said lower level. And I said, wait a minute, isn't a basement another word for a lower level? And Mackie said, no, Moy, I think the basement is lowest level. And I said, yeah, you might be right. And then we heard that humming sound. And then we heard the low southern singing of, I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna shove this up your keister and let it shine. And we looked back, and when we turned off our night vision goggles, we could see the electricity crackling through the air, walking towards us. And then we turned it back on. We turned back on our night vision, and then we saw him. And all three of us agreed, okay, we got to get through this. And so we picked up that garage door and thrust. And then the cop came running after us. And then so we ran underneath the garage door. And then I said, wait, hold on. And then right as he was running at us, when he was about a foot away, I slammed down that garage door. And then, bam! He hit the garage full force, head on. Ow! God damn it! Why the fuck does Easterman never let me have those night vision goggles? Alright, okay. Now, we need to find a generator. Okay, we were in this, what appeared to be a basement / garage, and there were a couple of squad cars. And on the right side, there appeared to be like a storage area. And then on the left side, they appeared to have big tools. A room with big tools. And I thought, okay, if I was a generator, I think I'd be in there. And so we ran into that room, and sure enough, we saw the generator with a big tool chest and some riot gear. And then we ran to start power the generator. I grabbed the pull cord, pulled, and nothing happened. And Javon said, oh, wait, I see the problem. There ain't no gas in it. And I said, okay, but how do we find gas? And John said, wait a minute, hold on. They got squad cars down here, right? So, I'm willing to bet they also have a couple gas cans down here, too. And I said, alright, okay. Although, with the way the economy is going, I wouldn't be surprised if they charged us like $10 a gas can. And Javon kind of looked at me and like, really, bro? Type look through the night vision goggles. And I said, oh, come on. Let's not lose our senses of humor here. And then, bam! The garage door flung open. And in walked the cop with his long taser rod. And with his southern drawl, and said, all right, I'm going to find you, just like I'm going to find me some pistachios. That's a fun word to say, pistachios, like like Domino's, Fellatio, Joe DiMaggio. Come on, guys, help me out here. And I said, wait a minute, hold on. Okay, so what I want you to do, Javon, is I want you to go beside the cars, run, go get the gasoline, and then, Mackie, when he gets the gasoline, you have to start this generator up real quick. Okay? And then I'm going to distract him. And then he said, okay, who's talking about distracting me? The cop said. And then I ran head on towards him. And then I was just about to blindside him, but he raised his electrical rod right towards me, and I swerved. I narrowly avoided getting hit by him, and then I ran to the storage area, and then I heard a loud bark. And then I looked at him. I looked where it was coming from, and it was a cage, and it was a big German Shepherd. And I looked down, but the German Shepherd, it was stuck at one position. And then after a few more seconds of looking, I realized it was a rubber dog, like a fake rubber dog. Oh, that was weird. And then the cop burst through the door. And then I hid behind one of the desks in the storage room. And he said, I'm gonna find you, Ethan. I don't know for sure if it's you, but I'm gonna find you. And it is by pure dumb luck that they put this here, but on one of the desks there was a plastic bottle, an empty plastic bottle. So I grabbed it and threw it. I threw it into the other room and said, oh, I know you in there. And then the cop ran to the other room, and then I closed the door behind him. And then I ran out of the storage room, and then the lights finally came on. And so I ran into the other storage room with all the tools, and I said, all right, guys, we got the power running. High five. Yeah. And I should probably mention that there was a paddy wagon that I didn't even notice until the power was on. The cop had lowered the garage door to trap us in, so this time we were actually able to push a button, and then it was able to go up. But as it was going up, the back doors of the paddy wagon slammed open, and out screamed the cop. Ah! Ah! We all screamed, and we ran past the mini cell block that we were in, and then we ran through two big doors, and then we were in what looked like my dad's old police station back in Cape Fear, North Carolina. And then I said, wait a minute, hold on. Guys, I think I know where the exit is. Come on, follow me. And sure enough, I knew where the exit was. It was on the other side of the building, and it was another garage door. But this time, the garage door, it had 3 buttons on the side of it. A pink button, a green button, and a blue button. And underneath, there were keys. And you had to turn the key and push the button. It was a lockout/tagout system. So, we need a key to get out, I said, because of course we do. Why would we not? And I said, all right, guys, so what we need to do is we need to wait, should we split up like in Scooby-Doo? Should we do that or not? And he said, and Mackie said, well, I think we should, because we could almost cover this entire police station, and we could look for the keys. And then on a screen beside the garage door, it said, look for the keys in the rooms, and don't worry, none of them are going to be in drawers or anything like that. So, and they also glow in the dark. And I said, oh, okay. Wait, like that key right there? And I noticed that there was a pink key in the room right beside the garage door. And I walked over and picked it up, and I said, wow, that was easy. And so I stuck it in there, and it said, but there was a sign beside the lockout tag system that said, keys and buttons must be turned and pushed at the same time. And I said, well, teamwork makes the dream work. All right, so we got to split up now. And then, out of nowhere, the cop came out from behind the corner and said, yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. And so we all three ran our separate ways. And then the cop said something that I don't think I'm allowed to say it on here. But he, you know what? I don't give a shit. I'm going to say it. He said to Javon, come back here, nigger. And he ran. He ran after Javon. And Javon called out to him and said, what, bro, I was a fellow cop. And he said, it don't make no damn difference to me. It don't make no damn. And then after that, I went into all different kinds of rooms. And then as I was running in the dark, I saw a blue glow. It kind of looked like that blue glowing key from Saw. And I ran over there, and then I noticed, oh, it's another key. Thank God. And then I saw another blue light right beside me, and it was the crackling blue lightning of the cop's taser. And then he said, yeah, thank God indeed, my boy. And then I was once again running from this dude. Now, I guess I probably could have fought him, but I was not interested in getting shocked by his taser again, nor was I interested in fighting him in the dark where he has an advantage. And then I ran back into what looked like a police locker room, and then I noticed that the lockers open. They didn't require locks, so I hid. They were big enough to hold a police uniform, a shotgun, and many other guns. And he said, all right, I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna smell you. I can smell your keister. And I thought, okay, is he making this up himself, or did somebody write it for him? And and then I was like, okay, I just gotta wait for him to move out of the way. Okay, I think he's gone. And then I ran back to the garage door with the key, and then I put in the second key. And then now I just sat down and waited. And sure enough, Mackie came back, and he was hoisting something in his hand. He was hoisting something green, and he said, yeah, I knew you should trust the Irishman to find a clover key. And he was hoisting up the green key. And then he put the key in the keyhole, and then he said, all right, now we just need to turn it. And then I said, wait, we need 3 people. We need Javon. But where's Javon? And he starts, and then out came screaming Javon. Ah! And behind him was the officer. And he said, oh, yeah, thanks for leading me to all your buddies. What you doing outside the jail, huh? Oh, I'm going to put your asses under the jail. And then, out of nowhere, Mackie ran into one of the dark rooms, and then he was holding something, what appeared to be an old computer, and he threw it right at his face. Ow! And he said, all right, guys, throw something at him. And so we did. We ran into the black rooms and started throwing whatever we could find at him. And then I ran right up to him, and I gave him a nice left hook. And then I punched him right in his face, and then uppercut, and then stamped on his toes real hard. And then punched him in the stomach, and then elbowed him out. And he said, oh, God damn it, sons of bitches. He was laying on the ground, and I said, okay, let's turn those keys. And so all three of us, I grabbed the blue, Javon grabbed the pink, and Mackie grabbed the green. And then we said, all right, 1, 2, 3. And then the buttons lit up, and then we pushed them. And then the garage door made that grinding sound, and it slowly started to rise up, and so did the officer. And I said, all right, you guys get out of this police station. I'll hold him off. And then I ran, and I kicked him right in the head before he even got a chance to get up. And he said, ow, God damn it. Fucking head. And I thought, that was easy. So then after that, I ran and I slid right under the garage door. And then I saw Javon and Mackie in the distance. And then I ran after them. I said, hey guys, wait for me. And then I heard a big, loud police siren sound. And then I saw the blue and red lights in the distance. And I saw the cop stick his head out the window and said, all right, I'm coming to get you. And then he pressed on the gas pedal, and the squad car started roaring towards us. And he said, yeah, I'm coming at you like your worst nightmare. And then we ran, and then we thankfully saw the same shuttle that had brought us in, and then we jumped in. We opened the door, and then all three of us got in that old familiar faded lime room with the brown leather chairs, and then we closed the door, and then boom, and then the room shook, and evidently the squad car had hit us. And then we sat down in the chairs, and we said, oh, God, please take us home. Get us out. Get us out. And then mercifully, the room started moving again. And we thought, okay, oh, God. And I said, okay, are you guys okay? Yeah, I'm okay. And Javon said, And I said, Javon, what's wrong? And he said, I don't want to talk about it. And I said, okay. And I said, I may not be a therapist, but I bet I can help you more than Easterman can. And then, out of nowhere, we heard some cheesy elevator music and we heard the voice over the intercom of Dr. Eastman say, all right, this is the moment for your big heart-to-heart chat. Character development. And he said, and I said, You heard the man. And Javon said, all right, okay. You see, after I got back from Murkoff, I didn't want to do nothing. I was just so depressed after seeing all that. But I live in the apartment with my auntie in San Marquis. And then after that, when I turned 21, I joined the police force. I went to the police academy. And I was an officer for a little while. But there was this one cop who he really just had it out for me. The whole time he just really had it out for me. And he filed a complaint against me saying that I was insubordinate. But no, he didn't really have much of a case against me there. And then he just kept on. He would just be so cold to me. And then eventually I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to request a transfer to another police department. So I did. I asked to transfer to the Toluca Police Department, which is on the northern part of the island. And then I was just about to transfer. I had already put my 2 weeks notice in. And then I got a call from Toluca Police Department. And they said, oh, sorry, but one of the officers said that you're insubordinate and you're just not a very good employee. So we can't hire you. Sorry. And it didn't take a detective to find out that it was that guy, Lee Coyle, that racist officer who had it out for me. And on my last day there, he came over to me real polite and said, hey, I'm sorry I've been kind of an asshole to you, but I gave you a gift in your locker. Open it up. I really want you to be surprised. And I opened it, and it was an effigy of a head. A head with a white pointy hat on. And he said, ooh, you're scared of ghosts, aren't you? And then that was in the middle of October 2022. And then after that, I just went back to my apartment. And that was my last day on the force. And I cried. I cried. And it was... I didn't want another job after that. That asshole ruined it for me. And honestly, I hate it here. But, I mean, at least I get 3 free meals. And at least I get paid where I can buy some things that I might want from the store. I don't know what I'm going to do when I get out of here. Or if I get out of here. And I said, okay, Javon. Thank you for sharing that. But hey, I think I could probably get you a job somewhere. Yeah, I could give you a good reference. And I said, and then Mackie spoke up and said, yeah, man, you were always a good prison guard to me, mate.